Hey, I know this is supposed to be an off week, but it's been a while since we brought you a rabbit hole episode, and we've come across a series of stories that are germane to what we've been discussing, so we've decided to pop up in your feed for a quick hitter. This week, we're going to look at the path to heaven and hell as described in the Middle Ages, and, in particular, as depicted in this story of one man's journey. The notion of this path has been the source of a constant stream of writing, with many of our modern ideas springing wholly formed, a la Athena, from medieval visions. Probably the best known example of these writings comes to us from Dante Alighieri, who wrote powerfully about his journey to the bottom of hell and up through to paradise in the Divine Comedy. Painters have used his motifs for years, and the most powerful example of these that we here at T&M have personally been able to go see is the art that resides in the hell staircase of the Burghley House, a huge Elizabethan residence and park that's situated not too far from where we currently live. The effect of the staircase is to lead the viewer up from the depths of hell and into the heaven room, and to be quite honest, it's intense. The ceiling above the staircase is macabre and dark and harrowing, as one should rightfully consider the entrance to hell to be. Oddly, in this case, the entrance to hell doubles as the mouth of a cat, which I thought was an interesting artistic choice. For what it's worth, I'm not making any of these names or the cat/hellmouth motif up. If you want to see an awesome 360 tour of what I'm speaking about, follow the links to the Burghley House in the show notes. Anyway, going further down this rabbit hole, we're going to take a look at the story of Dagobear and his near miss with hell, a story which predates both Dante and the Burghley House hell staircase by over 500 years. It's a wild ride, but there's a moral to all of it, which I'll tell you up front, and after I tell you, I'll use the rest of the episode to explain how we got there. So here we go. The moral is this: good friends, gifts to the church, and adherence to the true faith can save you from damnation. Otherwise, prepare to ride a black stallion into hell, the mouth of which resides in a volcano in Sicily. Like I said, I'll explain. For now, this is Thugs and Miracles. Rabbit hole number 6. The soul in the ship. When goodly King Dagobear left this vale of tears, the dear god allowed Satan to seize his soul because he had not purged it of every sin. The devil took his soul and placed it on a ship and desired to sail the seas with it. But Saint Dionysus did not forget his dear friend. He prayed to God that he might assist the soul, and this request was also granted. Saint Dionysus took with him Saint Mauritius and other friends who had once honored and celebrated King Dagobear during his lifetime. A choir of angels also followed them and guided them to the sea. But when they met up with the devil, they did battle with him. The devil had little power over the saints, was soon vanquished, and thrown out of the ship into the sea. The angels then collected Dagobear's soul, and Saint Dionysus, with his choir of angels and saints, returned to heaven. This telling of Dagobear's harrowing escape from the clutches of the devil comes to us from Grimm's Saga number 439, King Dagobear's Soul in the Ship. Now, to be honest, I stumbled across this telling while in the middle of my research for the Dagobear episodes we just concluded. It was on the web archive site for the Fairy Tale channel, and while the sourcing was a tad suspect, the way the story was written did sound like the type of crazy/nonsensical medieval story that we've come to love, so I dug a little deeper and was able to verify this telling is an actual Brothers Grimm story, thanks to a 1986 article by Peter Dinzelbacher entitled The Way to the Other World in Medieval Literature and Art. More than the Brothers Grimm, however, the story has also appeared in the Gesta Dagoberte, a chronicle on the life and deeds of Dagobear, written sometime around 835 at the Abbey of Saint Denis. Now, given what I said in the opener that the moral of the story is all about keeping good friends, giving gifts to the church, and adhering to the true faith? Well, we're going to take this self-serving story about Dagobear, written by the monks at the Abbey of Saint Denis, with a very large grain of salt. So, knowing that we have to be careful with how we accept the gesta, what does the book say about Dagobear's story? Well, first off, it makes a case for how Dagobear signed over all of his property and treasures to the church right before he died, going so far as making his son, Clovis II, sign a document confirming the order. Now remember, Clovis II was only 4 or 5 years old at this point, so the story's already a little suspect, but it does go on to mention that after his death, the gifts don't go forth as the king had wanted. Long story short, the monks of Saint Denis were basically saying, the king totally wanted us to have all of his stuff, making a case for how they had been cheated. Why they were saying this in a 1980s California surfer accent, I couldn't explain. They also had the only known version of the king's will and were the ones writing his biography. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, no doubt, but it's absolutely fascinating how many times the succession of kingdoms seems to have come down to the dying whispers of monarchs who tell their last words to the people who get bequeathed everything. I'm beginning to lose faith that this is just a coincidence. Moving on. From his book, Hell and Its Rivals, Death and Retribution Among Christians, Jews, and Muslims in the Early Middle Ages, Alan Bernstein tells us that the following happened to Dagobear next. Quote, on the day that Dagobear died, his spirit was seen being maltreated by ugly demons who were conducting him in a rapid boat toward one of the seismically active volcanic islands of the Aeolian archipelago off the north coast of Sicily. The Frankish emissary, Anceswal of Poitiers, and his delegation, who were on mission nearby, came ashore to meet a famous recluse who informed them of this news. He told them that he had seen the king being drawn toward an active volcano. But, says the hermit, the king called out to Saints Denis, Maurice, and Martin with insistent appeals for his release. The saintly team intervened to transfer Dagobear to the bosom of Abraham. The account ends with a reference to the king's gift to churches, which he enriched far and wide. Whatever the social, political, and economic context, Dagobear can be counted as one to be saved, if not out of hell, certainly from the rim of its crater. End quote. Now, it wasn't just the Franks saying that the mouth of hell was in southern Italy. Again, according to Dinzelbacher, stories perpetuating the end of the Ostrogothic king Theodoric the Great point to hell's mouth being a volcano, and the nearest volcanoes to Ravenna, at least based on my limited geographical understanding, would be well further to the south, like Pompeii and Sicily. The story of Theodoric's hell ride is another nice bit of self-serving, with the most famous example of that story residing in the Basilica of San Zeno in Verona and dating to around 1130. Theodoric, if you remember from Season 1, was an adherent of Arianism. As such, with Catholicism growing by leaps and bounds in the 12th century and Arianism disregarded as a heresy, it seems appropriate that the Church would portray the great Goth as being deserving of such a fate. Throw in the story of his having killed a pope and, well, we've got ourselves a story. Dinzelbacher tells us, quote, the legend, which can be reconstructed by the help of many texts, tells how the king, having killed Pope John I, Symmachus and Boethius, was bathing when a hart, sent by the demon, came into his view. He jumped out, mounted a jet-black horse, sent by the demon as well, and hunted the animal. But he was not able to dismount the horse, which carried him straight into hell through a volcano. End quote. So there it is, yet another life lesson, kids. Never mount a conveniently placed horse when you set off to smite a deer. Given the amount of trouble we've seen kings getting into whilst deer hunting, maybe just leave Bambi alone altogether. But I digress. So now that we've seen that the mouth of hell lies in southern Italy and in the mouth of a volcano, or an extremely large cat, let's get to the end of today's rabbit hole by looking at one last particularly germane spot. The Tomb of Le Bonois himself. You see, we can verify the Brothers Grimm version of the story of Dagobear in Saint Denis thanks to the tomb built in the 13th century by Louis IX, aka Saint Louis. Dagobear's tomb is an intense and imposing monument in the heart of the Saint Denis Basilica, and I'll be sure to have plenty of pictures posted to social media and the website. Anyway, above the lying, recumbent effigy of Dagobear himself is a great and ornate set of carvings set out on 3 levels. On the lowest level, we can see a relief of one of Dagobear's primary life events, the story of Saint Denis waking him while he slept on the saint's altar, an altar that Dagobear found while deer hunting. Again, remember kids, fear the deer. Also, among this lowest tier, we can see Dagobear sitting sadly in a boat with a slew of imps paddling him off to hell. Moving to tier 2, we see Dagobear at the head of the boat, the imps behind him flung into the air and falling into the water as a collection of saints and angels come to take the king away from a wretched fate. Finally, on tier 3, we see Dagobear, exalted, ascending into heaven and the bosom of Abraham. Based on everything I've learned about Dagobear, if I ever had to pick a single friend that I could have for all time, it's definitely going to be Saint Dionysius or Saint Denis. Alright, that brings us to the end of the rabbit hole. Thank you for indulging me as I got to tell a final story about Dagobear. For what it's worth, considering the hero worship that he's received historically, I think it's telling that there's such a body of tales that seems to agree that the good king died without expunging all of his sins. This could be alluding to the fact that he died early and unexpectedly, but I think it could also be pointing to the notion that Dagobear wasn't as clean-cut as he was made out to be. Taking part in 2 attempted genocides will do that to a guy. Anyway, I'll have quite a few pictures going up on Instagram, Twitter, and the website as a result of this story, so head on over to any or all of these sites to check them out. Alright, thanks again to That's Not Canon Productions. I'm proud as can be to be a part of their network. So, if you're looking for new and intriguing content when you're done here, be sure to check out their menagerie of shows at that'snotcanon.com. As always, the music used for this show comes from Josh Woodward and includes his songs Bully and Lafayette. For a free download of these songs, or hundreds of other great tracks, check out his site at joshwoodward.com. Notes on this episode, a list of sources, an updated monarchy/family tree, and also a list of other great history podcasts are all available online at thugsandmiracles.com. We've made it easier than ever to sign up for our free email list, so please take advantage of that so we can keep you up to date with announcements on new shows and our monthly newsletter. Speaking of email, you can write to us at thugsandmiracles@gmail.com. You can hit us on Twitter at thugsandmiracles with no S on the end, or you can leave a comment on Facebook and Instagram at thugsandmiracles. Also be sure to check out the Time Travel Talks hashtag and account on Twitter and historypods.com and their associated Twitter handle at Pods of History. Finally, as always, if you haven't already, head over to your podcast player of choice and leave TNM and all of your other favorite pods a rating. We appreciate what you have to say, and as always, we appreciate you. Okay, once again, my name is Benjamin Bernier, and I look forward to seeing you next week as we continue to explore Thugs and Miracles.